Welcome to Get the Intel, presented by VAs for Construction. This podcast is your go-to for straightforward advice and stories from the construction industry. Join us as we talk with contractors who share their experiences and experts who offer practical tools and techniques to help your business run smoother. Whether you're looking to solve a problem or simply seeking inspiration, we're here to help you manage your work and enjoy life. Tune in for insights that matter to you.
Hello, Chad Gill here. I am the host of the Get the Intel podcast, where I talk with leaders in contracting, management, and really anyone helping us do business better. This episode is brought to you by VAs for Construction. VAs for Construction provides tailored support personnel to construction contractors. So whether it's as project admins, estimating support, or executive assistants, leveraging remote personnel can keep your team doing what they love while getting the data that you need. So visit us at construction.com, and let's see how we can free up some capacity within your team. Okay, so joining me today is Adee Klevit. She's a returning guest, and I'm very excited to talk to her again. She is a leader and visionary of Business Success Consulting Group. She has 25 years of knowledge and experience as a trained industrial engineer. I always like engineers, management consultant, and a business executive to give her a unique understanding of the challenges businesses face. She utilizes her practical know-how and wisdom to successfully help organizations and companies of any size dramatically improve their efficiency and performance. So by leveraging her ability to understand business processes as well as people, and drawing on her high caliber skills in vital areas of personnel management, finance, and operations, Adee can help virtually any business owner achieve their goals and bring order to their lives. And I can attest to it because she did this for us in both of our companies. So it's been really great. Adee, thank you so much for coming back. We're following a process that you actually helped us write in order to produce a podcast. So, so if it goes wrong, it's your fault, I guess, maybe. I don't know. Probably not.
Well, if it goes wrong, it means that you didn't follow the process, Chad. But anyway,
right.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here again and having this conversation with you.
This is awesome. So processes is one of those things we all know we're supposed to have, like a good diet and probably some other things, but this gets backburnered a lot, and people are like, well, I can't because I'm always changing, or they just seem too cumbersome. Nobody will read the manual. It's a lot of pushback against processes. I mean, why do we not do what we know we need to do? And we know that it works like all the time.
Well, it's a very good question. And I think it really varies in answer depending on the situation of the business. I think a lot of business do understand that they need it, and that's why they grow and scale. But you will have people that will have maybe the mindset that they like to wing it, just do it, different things, different ways every single time. It might be that they tried before and it was hard to implement. They got pushback themselves from the staff and they decided not to do it. Why people push back, like let's say when you are talking to them about delegating or getting things off their plate so a VA can do it for them, and they push back against it, they might not have thought about it, right? Or they might think it's a foreign concept until you show them how you do it. The same thing here, when you actually show people what systems can do for them, then they really see the benefit and start using it. So I think the listeners, if you have that idea that processes are not for you, or it's not time to systematize, or whatever the reason is really look and ask yourself, what is stopping you from actually doing it? What are your own thoughts? What are you telling yourself? Why processes? Like why you don't have the processes? And I think that would be the best answer.
Yeah, and I guess maybe the answer is, everybody has processes. The question is, do you have good processes, and can you repeat?
And do you have them documented? That's very true. I mean, that's definitely my line of like, if somebody says we don't have processes, of course you do, because everything that you do has a process. Even waking up in the morning and the way you make your coffee is probably a process. You don't do something else every single day. And you're right. The question is basically the way I was answering is like why you don't have the processes documented. That's more of the question.
And so it seems kind of daunting. People look at documentation of their processes, and they're like, oh man, they get this picture of that dusty old manual and all that kind of stuff. But a process doesn't have to, I mean, what a process looks like can be very different in different organizations and different places in the organization. Can you tell me like a little bit about that? Because we're not talking about the 400-page manual in a 3-ring binder that you only pull out twice a year or every 2 years.
At no time at all. Well, I don't know how many companies now still have 3-ring binders on their shelves, right? I mean, especially if you're remote, you're not going to have it. Or even if you're in the office, it changes. We find all of the information online. So we definitely use cloud based softwares in order to record the processes and procedures on it. So, you have the flexibility of accessing it on any device. You have the flexibility of changing making the changes when it's needed, etc. So processes are changing, it's true. But if you do not document your existing state, how would you know what the future state is if you don't have where to step towards the future? So you definitely need to have it documented in current state in order to move to future state.
Yeah, I think you explained it. One of the best ways when you explained to me was you have a 10-step process. That doesn't seem overly complex. I mean, so you got a 10-step process, you do it, you get to the end and your biscuits taste bad. You can go back and look at the steps you did, compare them to what we were supposed to do, and eventually figure out where things went wrong and then make an adjustment. Or you're like, hey, maybe it's just a bad process, bad recipe, whatever, but you can figure it out. Now, if you do that, or you just walk in a room, bad tasting biscuit, and they're like, how do you fix that? You're like, I don't know, just go make another biscuit until you make a good one. You don't have.
Yeah, and when you make a good one, then they ask you, how did you make a good one? And you don't have an answer because you didn't have it documented. So you're going, I don't know, it was a fluke, it just happened, right? So do it again, and you can't do it again.
Right, and it's maddening because you're trying to solve a function that has an limitless number of variables, and you don't even know what they are. And then you can't figure out why it's not repeatable, and it's frustrating.
That is very true. I agree.
Yeah. So where do you start when you're coming on, or you're trying to start with a new contractor or something like that? And you're like, okay, fine, I'll do some processes. All right. So a lot of times we're like, okay, we'll start with things like checking the mail and how to open the door and stuff like that, because they're like, oh, I know how to do these. These will be easy to do. But that's not really a great place to start, is it?
No. So first of all, if that's the attitude, fine, let's do some processes. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with that attitude. And I am really going to get out of you why processes are important for you. Because if we don't have that agreement, we don't have the eye on the mountain, then we're not going to be able to get to where we want to go, right? So I really want to understand, why do you want to document your processes and procedures? Is it because of knowledge transfer, because you feel like one of your key employees might leave, or if there is the risk, or maybe it happened? Maybe it's because you're going to hire new employees and you want to onboard them correctly. Maybe you're going to sell the business in 2 to 3 years and you want to definitely have your return on investment there. So we need to define a goal, not just because you want to do it. So that is the first thing that is so important to me, to understand the why processes are so important to you. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to also continue from there to the point of identifying what will need to happen at the end of the project for you to know it was a success. How are you going to measure success? Not just, okay, now I have well-documented processes. That's not enough. I want to know really, what are we going for? Are we going for 0 mistakes? Are we going for doubling the price of your business? Are we going for reducing your onboarding time by X%? What is it? And we set it up so we actually work towards it. Because, both you and I, Chad, are very goal-oriented. And if we don't know where we are going, how we know did we ever arrive there, right? So it can be like an unending process. So that is the high level we're going to talk about first. Then we're going to identify where in your company, if you had right now well-documented processes and procedures, you'll get the biggest return on investment. And when I'm talking about return on investment, I'm not talking about, not just money. Of course, it all will translate to higher profit, but the return on investment can be also time spent with your family. It can be an ability to take a vacation that you never were able before. It will be maybe the return on investment will be down the road of being able to sell your business for a higher price. It can also be like one of my clients told me today, that the return on investment for her is to actually get the time to sit down and create on the business, because she has so many great ideas that she was just not able to put it in place.
So how does having processes save me money? Why am I going to make more profit if I have processes that are documented?
I think it depends on where you are implementing those processes, but it will make you more money if you can now have your staff, that the existing amount of staff that you have actually produce more efficiently, so you don't have to hire another person. That is, I've seen that example over and over when clients told me, well, I'm looking at hiring such and such, or I'm looking to hiring for that position. I would say, there's no need to hire for that position. Let's see if we can consolidate, if we can really optimize the existing process right now and see if the existing personnel can actually take care of it. So that's money right there. It can be that you're leaving money on the table. Like maybe your sales process is not dialed in. Maybe your collections process, your accounts receivable, maybe there is a room there for improvement. And if there is, then we definitely need to look into it and get it into a process where you actually collect the money right away, for instance, and then you're going to make more money that way. If you are actually able to train your new employees faster, then you are less spending risk. There is less expenditure of resources, existing resources where you can save. It can be also employee retention. If you hire a new employee and you have a great onboarding process, and then you continue to train the employees that you have, you're not going to have as much a turnover, which is very costly, and does cost, it costs a lot of money to then retrain and hire new personnel.
Yeah, I mean, for me as a contractor with field crews, we saw things like, okay, we've got a startup process and we've got a end of day process. And that process makes everything, we've got less lost or broken equipment, less stolen equipment because we put everything away. We can identify it. Less downtime because at the end, our process says, do you need anything for tomorrow? And then, they fill it out. Is it perfect? No. Is it better? Oh, yeah. So it's like, okay, well, I need this for tomorrow. And then that process, it documents it because of the way we do our end of shift in logs. And that was part of something that we did. We were like, hey, we need to process it. And also, when you start doing things repetitively, you do them faster. It's just you're just used to it. It's almost like you have, I don't know about like mental muscle memory, where you're just, this is how we end the day. And there's a lot of efficiency that comes from that too. And then, I think also when you have a process that gives, I like it to like when, somebody says, what do you want for dinner? And it's wide open. You have no idea and you can't figure it out. But if you're like chicken or pork, okay, well, unless you're Jewish, that gives you two choices to pick from. If you're Jewish, you're having chicken. But, it's like, okay, so, having something to look at and compare it to is super helpful. So if we give our field crew a process for shutdown, they can then come back and say, I don't like this step. I don't like the way we end the day. And so we can keep finessing that process so that we do it. It doesn't mean that we're rigid and can't change. It means when we change, we know what we're changing.
That's exactly right. It makes it very specific and it gives a win, as opposed to, it basically gives a person a win and and let them be successful in what they do because you are very specific and identifying what needs to be done.
And then I think one of the management things that you showed me that was super helpful as well was when you have a process and there's a mistake, something happens, there's an error. There's like two questions. You were saying that, is it a person problem or is it a process problem?
Or both.
Or both. Yeah, or both. But now it's something that you can really start to factor into it. It's there. You don't have to try to figure that part out per se, and it makes it easier to both hold somebody accountable and assign accountability.
That is correct. That is correct.
So what does it look like? So you're a consultant that comes in and helps document processes. What does that look like to somebody who hasn't, experienced it? And because that was a game changer. I mean, that's like a really big boost, kickstart into your program of getting your whole business documented.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a team. It's not just me. I have very well trained and professional consultants and technical writers, and we are a whole team. So when a new client signs up with us, they are assigned a team of professionals that will take care of them and document the processes. So we first of all start with mapping all the processes. So that's the design phase. We will map the processes that needs to be documented. We are going to identify the procedures under each one of those processes that we will need to document. We will take an inventory of what you currently have. So if you already have documented processes or started on some, we're not going to do double work. We're going to work with that. We're going to identify who in each team, in each department, is going to actually help us with the process documentation, because it not all should fall on one person. There should be a multiple people that are going to help us with that process. And then we're going to set up the schedule on when we're going to document what and what's the priority. And then from there, we're going to embark on the process documentation. So we're going to meet with you once a week, usually, depends on what we decide, but the usual cadence is once a week. We are going to extract information. We're going to follow the map that we put together. We're going to extract information. We are going to then document it. Our very experienced technical writers, who the majority of them are actually engineers as well, they take the information from the videos, from the questions that the consultant asks, and create beautifully documented processes and procedures with screenshots and videos and references to different checklists, forms, whatever is needed. And then we send it for you to review, to you or your team or whomever was on and participating in as the subject matter expert here, and to review between calls, make edits, and then it goes back and forth until we actually document that entire department. Throughout the documentation, we actually also help you with process optimization. So we make sure that the process is optimized, that it's clear, that we recommend any changes or if we needed automations, whatever it is, in order for the process to work perfectly. And then once the processes are documented, then we go into the implementation phase, and we help you ensure that the processes are being followed by all, by first of all, rolling it out, and then coaching, educating also how to use the processes in day-to-day management. Which one of them you mentioned is really identifying when a process doesn't go well, or when you don't get the outcome that you want, that you ask the question, is it a process problem or a people problem? How you identify, maybe it's both, and how do you identify, and how do you move forward in fixing it?
And then, so I know a lot of times when people think about, or at least in my case, you think that the real reward or the thing that you're trying to create are the documented processes. That's the end goal. But along the way, there's a lot of advantages that come along also. So, I mean, like, obviously not in my experience, but in other people's jobs. How often did you come across a process where you realized that the process owner or that is woefully unaware of exactly how they do what they do, and then as they look at that process map, go, is that really how we do it?
It happens very often. I just got off a call when that happens, where the owner looked at the accounting processes and he goes, oh, I didn't know we were doing this way. This shouldn't be done that way. We should do blah, right? So it does happen very often, but that's the beauty of it. That's, the end goal is not necessarily documented processes. And that's what I tell my clients. If they come to me and they say, well, at the end, I want to have documented processes, then it's not a good fit. And I'll tell you why, because it doesn't end there. Having documented processes, will not create you more money. There's
Right.
no point in doing it if you just want documented processes. the utilization of the documented processes, that is where you're going to see the return on investment. So really the end product we are going for is your staff being trained and know the processes optimized so you get the best results. But not only that you have empowered staff members that they know how to change a process if needed, that you and your staff know how to revise the processes when it's needed, and it becomes a living thing in your organization. So what we're going for is creating a process-driven culture without losing the culture that you already have and without having a fantastic culture in terms of your people. But we do also have to have a process-driven culture so people will use the processes in order to expand the organization.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it's, if you're not committed to it, and I'm a firm believer, and I'm always just one app away from success. So, here my brain's going, absolutely, this would be a cool piece of software. Clearly, we're going to need some software in this. You're like, so
and we do use software, of course.
Yeah.
We use a process
three-ring binder
documentation.
has become many things. What does it look like when you have these and these different apps that they're using?
In terms of,
like, I know you work with things like Trainual and Sweet Process and Whale and stuff like that, but like, what are the main components when you're looking at that? Or, if I'm going in, because, am I just going to write all these down in a Google Drive somewhere? Is this, because like, you're right, we don't have a 3-ring binder, but there's a lot of other options.
there are many other options, but there are excellent software out there that you just named that are meant specifically for that, meant specifically for documenting processes. And the reason why I highly recommend using a process documentation software as opposed to a Google Drive or Word documents is because the whole idea behind those softwares is to make sure that there is one point of truth, meaning everyone in the organization know that in order for them to understand how we do a certain thing, they go to that software right there. They know that they have to log into Sweet Process or Whale or Playbook Builder or Trainual and access the information there. There is also version control. You can also have control of who can see a process or a procedure by role. So not everyone is exposed to all the processes because you might want to protect your HR or your accounting processes. It's also, you can protect it so it cannot be downloaded. So if you are afraid that somebody will walk away with your knowledge, they can't. You can also monitor who logged in when, so you see how much it's being utilized. And my favorite feature is that it reminds you of the regular reviews that needs to happen, and it keeps the versions. And when you make a review, you can make a note of what that review was. So, of course, you can also keep versions in Word and in Google Drive, in Google documents, but it's harder. It's much harder to keep track of it, and it's not as organized. And you also have to spend time editing the format so it will look nice. With those softwares that I just named, they do it for you. All you need to do is you just go in there and you type, and then it's already organized. It looks like a checklist or a process, and it makes it much easier. So if you like to invest in apps, definitely invest in that kind of app of actually having a process documentation software. It's very important.
Yeah, and I love the idea, like kind of like YouTube, you can put together a playlist in them and say, or a curriculum and say, here's a new hire. You got to go through all these processes, and you can do tests and quizzes and see how to go, and then make sure they get the onboarding they deserve.
Absolutely. And that's what we do internally. That's what we did for clients, but that's also what we do internally. We have all of our processes documented, and then we have a checklist, an onboarding checklist that basically a new hire, depends on the position. First of all, we have a general onboarding checklist, and then we have onboarding checklists for each position that they have to follow. Read this document, read this procedure, explain how you do it, do a practical with somebody so that you can show them that you know how to do it, then read this one, then listen to this case study and listen to this video. So yeah, it's all very much aligned like that.
Yeah, I love it. And also it's, you're putting together your best of best, your best of series, it's like, when you don't have a documented process, you may have it memorized and you may be able to get it right most of the time, but you're going to get 7 out of those 10 steps the way you wanted it, and the other 3 maybe you don't. But if you have that process to follow, and then that's what you train other people, you're taking the best practices all the way along, and that gets rid of the most expensive thing you can have in a company, which is repeated mistakes. One mistake I can live with. A repeated mistake, there's just no reason.
Very true. Absolutely very true.
How does somebody get started with you? I mean, what's the best way to reach you? We're going to put some links into the show notes and everything like that. But what is kind of that process to reach out and kind of get started with you? And maybe I would say, how do you know when you're ready? But if you have a business, you're probably ready.
Exactly. So you're ready when you actually are growing and scaling. If you just started a business, you're probably not ready. Go get clients, go get customers. You probably need to do a lot of marketing. But if you are a fast growing company that is lacking consistency, you're ready. And the best way to reach me, I'm going to give you choices like Chad mentioned. It's either chicken, pork, or beef. So which one do you want? When you go to a restaurant, or super salad, right? It's all about choices. So the choices are, you can find me on LinkedIn. I can guarantee that I'm the only Adi Klevit on LinkedIn. So you can look me up there, and it's very easy. You can call or text 503-662-2911, and we will answer you, and you can schedule a time to meet. Or you can look at our website. You can visit our website at Biz Success CG for consulting groups, so bizsuccesscg.com. And there is a contact page, and feel free to send me a message there, and we'll be happy to talk to you and see if it's a fit and get going.
That's great. I will definitely get make sure we get those all listed into the show notes and stuff like that. And I do encourage you to it. I've been through that process twice. It works out really well. And it's amazing the difference it makes in a company just as you're going through those processes to find out this is how we do things. And it just gives you a place to kind of tweak and make changes in a controlled manner. And I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we're operating in that chaotic field, and this puts some structure to it. And I think it puts guardrails around what you do. And while a lot of us bristle against structure, we know that we need it. And that's it kind of helps control, especially those visionaries of us. It helps keep us kind of inside the parameters that we set for our business. So it is a very very helpful thing to do to get your processes documented. And it is so much easier when you get somebody else to do it, just like anything. I mean, I'm a big fan of delegation. I built a whole company so other people can delegate. So yes, delegate your process creation as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Adi. Always a great joy to talk to you, and I really appreciate it. And we will be checking in with you again soon, I'm sure.
Well, thank you, Chad, for having me. It's always good talking to you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Get the Intel. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes, and check us out at vasforconstruction.com to see how we can advance your business.